I just thought that we would pick up our conversation about E3 stuff where we left off last time while I have it run through this a little bit more carefully and a little bit more realistically with this guy's tier list.
You're
So
gonna
you
try
wanted to
it
talk
again.
about another samurai-based game, was that correct?
Well, it was just a parallel statement to yours about the realistic samurai not being intriguing, um, which I agree to an extent because that game, it looks good, but the only thing that I found interesting really about it was if it is, it was a gameplay cinematic thing, and they showed a weird duel thing that if it is truly a dual gameplay thing that you can do, it
Mm-hmm.
looked pretty cool and fun. And that would be the reason I played it, for that, just to experience that gameplay.
Now, to be clear,
Um,
which game is this that you're talking about?
Ghost of Tsushima, the realistic samurai game.
Okay.
There's in the video for that, they had um, a scene where you're in like a Akira Toriyama styled samurai duel, and it looked pretty sweet. If that is an actual thing that you can do, and it is as fun as it looks like, um, that would be my only reason for playing it, because the rest of it just looks generic and boring.
Okay. I can respect that.
So it was just more of an aside to, yeah, I can see why. Just, you know, the the more realistic it is, just the more generic you get. It's I've seen Akira Toriyama. I've
Mm-hmm.
seen those stories. I've very experienced those. Like, you're not going to give me anything new, unless this gameplay duel is as good as it looks. That would be the only new thing in there.
Sure, yeah. Um,
So
go ahead.
yeah, no, I was just gonna say. So that was the whole point of bringing up that other game. Was just that as an aside to the Sekiro,
Um,
being more
AEO.
fantastical.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I can see that.
No.
So let me ask you this then: wait, E3 is still going or no?
The conferences are finished, but it's the whole week. Um, so they'll have stuff on the floor that people will see, and more news will come as people like actually get their hands on the stuff. So I suspect by the end of the week, things that are playable or things that they've showed off more will have more write-ups, more news on.
All right,
Like right now,
but
you
the
can go on
conferences are
Twitch and
over.
see
Like all the
more
big
stuff.
reveals are pretty much done. You would expect.
Yeah, if there's more big reveals, I would be surprised. I mean, not to say that that hasn't happened.
Sure, yeah. All right. Well, that with that being the case, then my question to you is: out of all the stuff that they showed, what was your favorite thing?
I have a couple. The number one thing is still Spider-Man for me. Like, that's the thing I'm hyped up about the most.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice, I'm definitely interested in.
Mm-hmm.
The main new thing that I'm like super hyped about and was like, wow, that came out of nowhere, is that Damon Machina, which is by the producer and mechanical designer of the original like 4 Armored Core games.
Oh, that's the one
And
that you
it
showed
looks
me the other day. That I was like, oh, that looked like mostly cinematics. Like it didn't have a lot of gameplay.
No, did I show it yesterday? The one with the robots.
Yeah, well, I mean, presumably there was more than one with a robot at the E3, but yeah, no, I
Well,
think
true.
we're talking about the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just they showed some like gameplay type stuff, but there was no HUD, no actual gameplay.
Yeah.
Um, but the style of game that that is based off of is one of my favorite. Armored Core, Masters of Arena is
Mm-hmm.
probably my favorite game of all time.
Okay.
So, and it's by like 2 of the guys who helped make that. So I'm cautiously optimistic for that. I'm definitely going to be keeping my ear out for that game. That's going to be released sometime next year.
Okay. Yeah, I mean,
But
who knows? Like either it could be an awesome game, it could be a terrible game. Like we just have no way of knowing yet
sure,
which of those it'll transform into. That was really what I was getting at.
yeah, and no, you're definitely right. We won't know until it's out. But I've been wanting a new Armored Core game in that vein for a long time, and this is the closest I've seen since then, essentially. So that just has me hyped, like, because I want that. It would be like if the guy who did Tactics came out and was like, "Hey, I'm making a true Tactics 2."
Okay,
Like,
well,
you'd be cautiously optimistic, but you would be like, I want that still.
well, to be fair, like that did already happen to me.
Well, was it the same team though? I thought it was a different team.
It was probably a different team, to be fair.
Yeah.
Is this guy gaining strength? He is. You fucker. But yeah, like the Tactics Advance was, I would say, probably I feel confident saying was a disappointment. I think pretty much to everybody. But yeah, I mean, when you put it in those terms,
It's actually like beloved on the internet though. Like I look
Tactics
around
Advance?
and everyone
Are you fucking
has
kidding
it.
me?
Yeah,
Wow.
I'm not joking. Like everyone holds the Game Boy One to like crazy high praise.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, no accounting for
I never
taste, I
played
guess.
it. So
I mean, so I will have a much longer stream / video / playthrough of Final Fantasy Tactics / playthrough of War of the Lions version of Final Fantasy Tactics / playthrough of the 1.3 patch that I still have yet to beat / playthrough of all the other mods eventually. That is my #1 game. So I will speak about this at greater length at some other time, but one thing that I will definitely say right here and right now is the thing that makes that game, that pushes that game over from just a good game, from just a masterpiece even, and into a transcendent game, one that uncovered a type of mechanic that I certainly hadn't seen and almost haven't seen since, was the fact that your attacks, because of awkwardly enough, apparently this was because of a limitation in the technology, your magic and your attacks could be cast on one turn but take time to resolve, and in between you attempting to do something and that effect triggering, other people could move out of the way, could attack you, could reduce your attack damage, could apply statuses to you, or kill somebody who's buffing. There's a lot of all the details are right in those instants in between when you cast a spell and when it resolves, as well as the initiative system being not you and all of your teammates taking your turns all at once, but rather everyone taking their turn in order according to a constantly refreshing speed value that could be modified from inside the game, by gear, by statuses, by attributes, by effects. This made for every turn, every moment, and every action in the game feeling not present, immediate. Awkwardly, the delay in time makes everything feel immediate. It really highlights the importance of each unit as it gets its turn, whereas in a Disgaea, which was a very, very good game, but maybe a masterpiece, depending on, for not having individual turns, I'd call it a masterpiece in that genre. What keeps them separate is the fact that you do have a first order optimal strategy in that game. When you move all of your units at once, you want to do all the damage all to one guy in such a way that you are outside of the range of other people, or outside of the range of less people, or inside the range of less people, I guess how you'd say that. That is a huge difference, and we haven't seen that repeated. Sorry, I'm just popping off now.
no, I mean that's definitely one thing that I've been wanting in a new tactical RPG is individual speed and initiative. That has definitely been missing from the video game sphere for the longest time. It's one of the reasons why I like, or can not can't stand, because I like the combat in most pen and paper RPGs, but everyone has that initiative. I mean, spells generally resolve on the same turn, but the fact that everything isn't just I go, then you go, then I go, then you go, my turn, then your turn, my
Yeah.
turn, then your turn. I mean, fighting games to an extent have turns as well, but turns can be interrupted, turns can be changed. There are ways around that. And I definitely feel games where the turns can be affected in a way definitely transport them to an echelon above something else in the same genre. You have an action RPG, an action game where you can stun an enemy in the middle of their attack, and you're not limited to being stuck in an animation being hit by many things.
Right.
Like just having that extra time, like you said, the immediacy of these other attacks and other events going on make for a more game. It makes more like game as a not as a concept of a video game, but more the gamification of the game itself, if that makes any sense. Like the actual.
Yeah, I think that it makes there be. It's a deeper pool, right? So the more content you add to a game, the wider that pool gets. But that will never make your game deeper. In order to go deeper on a game, you have to make every decision matter more, and for it to be more, for it to support more thought. So like one of the hallmarks of a game that I will play and love is that a game that I will play and love is a game where when I'm not playing it, I can still play it. You know what I mean? Like Magic's really good for that, where when you're not at the table playing Magic, you can pull up a card list and kind of brew.
Sure.
And you won't get that sort of additional play, I guess I would say, unless you have a sufficiently deep game. So, how do I want to phrase this? When you have a situation where every action has more branches that it could take. For example, instead, let me give you an example. In Disgaea, if you have, 4 guys surrounding a medium-sized enemy and you attack with all of them, you kind of have an idea of how much damage you'll do. You have an idea how much life he has, so you know if I do this, he will die, right? And if he dies, he will not do damage to me. That's a very simple mechanical decision, right? Whereas in Tactics, if you have 3 guys and you see that some other guy's got a turn in between all 3 of them going, you have to determine, like, well, what's this guy going to do? Is he going to kill one of my guys before he can attack? In which case, I'll have brought this guy to low HP, but now this other guy will get an attack on me, and now I'll be, down 2 hits or down a guy or 2 guys. Or will he reduce my attack damage to the same effect? Right? Or will he put me to sleep and it'll be a total blowout? Or will he do an area of effect which will hit more of my guys because now they're all clustered around this gentleman? There's just so much more game there. I think you got the exact right phrase. There's more game in that situation. That's what we're looking for. We want more game.
Right. And that's one of the things I loved with Armored Core was the way you could customize the mechs was ridiculous. You had your initial power core, which made how much power you could generate, and then you had your engine, which contributed to thrust and how much energy you would have. Then you had a radiator, which would cool you down to make it so that you could have more energy overall. The different thrusters had different efficiencies on how much energy they would burn, how fast they would go, how much thrust they would shoot you up. The different weapons all had different weight, and you had to stay within the legs that you had weight thresholds.
Sure.
Different weapons.
Sounds like MechWarrior.
Yeah, but it was more.
Uh-oh. It sounds like I did something wrong because you just made a big
No, no,
sigh.
no. Like I never played MechWarrior.
Oh, okay.
I've seen people play it, but I've never played. Like my friend had it, and I played it like maybe once or twice at his house growing up. But it was MechWarrior was it was first person, and it was slow and a bit clunky, I would say. Whereas
Slow's definitely true, yeah.
Armored Core was very. It was fast, fluid. The controller was shit because it was on the original PlayStation without the before the DualShock with the thumb pads.
Yeah, yeah.
So moving around in a 3D scape with that and targeting and moving the camera was like this weird claw foundation thing they had to use on the thing. So it was like you were fighting the game a lot of the time to play the game, but
Sure.
I loved it. I don't know, just having all those different things, but it was as customizable as MechWarrior. So that analogy is correct. But it was a much more fast-paced, fluid game. I'm sure if I would go back and look at it now, it looks like shit. But to me, it was gorgeous at the time, and just being able to move that like quick burst to move around. Like there was one level I remember you have to defend a bridge from waves of enemy, and on the other side of the bridge where they were coming from, you start on the other edge of the bridge and they're going to attack the other one, so you have to dash along this narrow bridge, narrow to your giant ass mech that these cars would drive over. And as you're going, you're dodging left and right on these giant beams that are coming at you like a Gundam, like giant ass laser beam. And then you're getting surrounded by like 3 or 4 other mechs and doing like dog fights in this city, and like I don't know, it's like describing it now like it's pretty like just generic action game, but at the time like it was just
No. I think I understand. It sounds pretty good.
It was. I want to say that was FromSoft's first game. Actually, it was Armored Core.
Well, how different is the team now from the team that did that? Just out of curiosity, if you're aware.
The team that did those original ones, I think, left with the PS2 version of Armored Core 3. See if I can see the team on here. I want to say Silent Line was the last one that did. Shoji Kawamori. Let's see if I can find more on him. He's the guy who pretty much did it. Yeah, so he did Armored Core up to 3, and he also apparently did the mech designs for Macross, like the whole Macross series.
Mm-hmm. Wow, yeah. So that's like Well, those weren't the original mechs, right? There was some more before that, but those were
I'm sure
very fundamental.
Yeah, they're like the I guess the opposite of Gundam. I guess the Gundam in this would be like the main ones. I mean, you also have Astro Boy back in like the 50s or whatever, but like the first like mech things were like Macross and Gundam.
Sure, yeah.
Hatlabor and all that. Nakamoto, what has he done? Yeah, so they haven't done anything since like Armored Core 3, I want to say, because 4 and 5 I had and played, and they weren't as good. Like they went away from a lot of, like, they still had the customization, but it was much more of a just straight up like mech action game, which is cool. It's just not what I wanted, you know.
So you were looking for something with all the customization of something like, and forgive the comparison, MechWarrior,
Mhm.
but without slowing the game down. If I'm catching you correctly.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I can see the desire for that. I mean, a game that doesn't. There are two philosophies here, two paths to take, right? The more customization you allow into your game, the less you can customize the experience that that the people who play your game will have. For example, the difference between a roguelike, which will frequently have kind of nonsensical areas, enemies, pickups, what have you, and something like a Final Fantasy VII, where like literally every detail is drawn out and exactly laid in front of you so that you see the building rise over the horizon, just as like this chest comes over here, and if you go over that way you can like meet another NPC. Like, that's very different from something like Slay the Spire, for example, or Dead Cells, or any other like roguelike. And they're both good for sure. But I don't know, I tend to be a little irked when a game doesn't provide me some level of customization, I guess I would say.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, we want, like, there's a place for narrative games, like you said, but I play games for the game of the game.
Sure, no,
Like
no, you want to play.
yeah, like when we talked about Skyrim and Fallout, like I don't want to walk around, kill a rat, and get the 80th wheel of cheese, you know? Like I want an actual, like, that's why I feel like a lot of games after the original PlayStation have lost. They've lost the actual game play a lot of the time. Like you have, games that always come through. You have Dark Souls that bring in good gameplay, and that's their shtick is, here's the gameplay, here's the game.
Sure.
But I feel like that's missing. We have a lot of narrative, we have a lot of story, but I don't feel like we have a lot of game anymore.
I think possibly part of that is that if you consider the creation of new game mechanics to be something like a science, sciences can get sort of used up. Like once you learn all the things there are to learn, the science has less to offer. I'm not saying that that's the case or that any science has gotten there, but there's definitely a point where, after you've made a lot of discoveries, there's a limited amount of new and exciting things to find out. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely get, what was that? What's the term? Your return on investment gets very low, and that
Sure, yeah.
that definitely comes up. But I feel like I know, like a lot of the VR stuff with the new experiences with that, like a lot of the small little games, I feel they're coming out with that. There's just, I don't know, like there's the author, Ralph, what's his name? The gameplay
Good
guy.
old Ralph, what's his name?
Yeah. Game design, Ralph. Not Will Wright. Why the fuck did Will Wright come off? Yeah, Ralph Coster. he has that book, A Theory of Fun, which goes over the evolution of games and the evolution of fun on a societal setting, which is a very good read. I highly recommend it. And he talks about, like, a lot of the time these little gameplay mechanic additions and subtractions are hard. It not so much that there's not the diminishing returns on the science of it, but that it's just harder and harder to find something. Like you have Katamari Damacy, which is rolling around picking up stuff to make things bigger. That's a game. There's no real story to that. Like, there is a story, but it doesn't matter. You're not playing to unlock the story. You're playing to unlock more levels and get bigger and eventually suck up the world. You know, like they come along once in a while, and I feel the fact that we no longer have constraints based on the hardware of what we're making, that people aren't forced to be creative in the ways that they do things anymore. Outside of indie, small teams where, they're just slow, they have to be creative just because they don't have the time to make, something like a big team would. But you look at a lot of the American companies in the past decade, maybe, and a lot of them haven't really come up with new gameplay. Most of the new gameplay has actually been out of Japan, I would say.
Okay.
And I feel that most of that ended with like the PlayStation 2, with the hardware limitations of the system, where we had to cut corners to do things a certain way, or that's not a bug, it's a feature, and that feature became the most beloved part of a game. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but there are plenty.
Right. Well, hardware any kind of limitation. When sorry to cut you off, but one of the truisms in art and science, basically creation, is that when you are forced to make do when you're under constraint, you have to get creative in order to reach the same level of attainment. Reach attainment is stupid. To reach the same level of quality that you would if you had the proper tools. So, like, someone who has a screwdriver and has to hammer a bunch of nails is going to have to come up with a technique, whereas someone with a hammer who's got to hammer a bunch of nails is just going to proceed as is usual, right? That's probably a terrible example. I'm the worst at examples. But the idea is that it generates something new and unseen to have to try something different.
Right. And that's exactly what I mean. Like, you look at that post-mortem on Diablo. The only reason Diablo is an action RPG is because he turned the turn limit up to like 100 turns a second, or something stupid, just so that it would be a real-time game.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, like, it's totally was supposed to be a turn-based, like, tactical thing, like Fallout, and then they were like, no, we need a real time, and he was like, okay, well, let me just do this. And that's why you have those clunky animations of hitting the guy and like all that, and it was amazing. Like, Diablo is one of the like cornerstones of gaming, like what it's created from that, like that truism of a constraint putting out the best is something that I feel that we've gotten away from, or necessarily that it's not something that we've gotten away from, but something that there is no real constraint anymore. Like, you don't draw distance on games are like ridiculous. You know,
Sure, yeah.
like whatever. Given there's no hardware limitations. That's mainly where I'm going. Sure, you have like, oh, we want to pump out 4K at 120 hertz. You know, it's sure that's like a great thing and it looks gorgeous, but like you're not. All you're doing is increasing fidelity on nothing. You know, you're making a shiny pile of poop, essentially. Like,
Whoa, hot take.
yeah, like it's just. I don't know. I've always been more on, like you said, the game, the gameplay of a game. Like that draws me in more than any story has, any visual effect, anything else. Is just how the game feels to play.
Sure.
That's why,
yeah.
like, any of those like story, like Heavy Rain, I never played. It didn't look interesting to me. The like Metal Gears, after a while, just got like meh, because I was like, I'm watching a movie. Like, I want.
Yeah, no,
I
that.
don't want to watch a bad movie. I want to play a game. You know. Like,
Yeah, I'm totally feel you on that one.
yeah. Like it's just different narrative, and I feel like we've gotten away. Like there's, like The Last of Us was a great story. I loved the story in it, but it was like the game was completely lacking. Like there were experiences in the game that you can only get from a game because you're interacting, you're making the story unfold, and there's certain things that God of War. Did you ever play God of War 3?
I played God of War 1, and then I had enough, I think.
Okay, so do you care if I spoil God of War 3
No,
for
I
you
don't
then?
care. I doubt that
Okay.
there's anything about it that I wouldn't have imagined.
Yeah, no, there's a scene with the final boss. You're killing Zeus, as the final game of God of War would have you do.
Isn't that how
Um,
the first one ended? Wait a second.
no, it was in the third one. The first one you
Okay.
killed Ares, the God of War.
Same shit.
Yeah. So, and anyway, you fight through the game, and then you get to the final boss, and then you're killing the final boss, and as you're killing the final boss, his health bar goes down to 0, but you're still hitting him. Like the game isn't over. Like there's no cutscene. There's nothing that's like saying that it's over. You're still going. You're still going. You're still going. The screen starts filling up with red, and you're expecting it to go, but the game is still going. And so you're like, okay, he's not entirely dead. I have to fill up the screen or whatever. The game, it doesn't stop until you actually stop playing the game. Like that, there's. When I was playing it, there was the boss. It was a bullshit boss that you had to like, you know, he kept dying to cheap bullshit, and then like when you get angry, and then or I got angry, and then I finally beat him, and it's like I'm watching this go down. And I'm like, yeah, fuck you, guy, you know, fuck this, and then he's beating the shit out of him, and then he's like you're like your emotional tie to Kratos' rage was there for me anyway, and it was like, yeah, fuck this guy. And then like as you're like, you come down off that adrenaline and you just plummet into like, holy shit, like that was horrifying of me to see that rage like enacted in the game and like not end until I calmed down. And that's something that can only be experienced through a game. I feel like there's no movie like where you can be, because you're not interacting with it. You're not.
Oh
doing
yeah,
anything.
for sure.
Yeah.
I 100% agree with that.
Yeah, and I feel like there are narrative stories that where that, like that, to me was the perfect example of a game doing narrative well. Like the narrative itself is shit, but the way that they delivered it through that gameplay was the height of game interacting with narrative. I feel it's one of anything where the gameplay is touching your emotions like that. I feel is the height of a video game.
I would say that I would agree with that statement.
Yeah, and I feel like we have those moments, but they're few and far between. Like The Last of Us had that with you know, the connection between Joel and Ellie and things that happen in that to an extent. But that was more just the story itself and not the gameplay lending to that.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. So it's definitely like, I don't even know what the fuck my point is. Just that I want more of that. Like, I guess is more my point.
I think that's
Like,
I think that's a fair request to make.
yeah. Yeah. So that's the end of that statement. I got nothing else.
Well, so that's a pretty popular standpoint.
Right.
At least among game designers or game designers who are really interested in talking about games as art. That's usually the first thing that they point out, is that there is an experience that you can get from interaction. There's like a lot of artists try and capture this sort of thing. You should talk to Lindsay about this because she'd probably have a more cohesive statement to make, right, about this. But a lot of times, in a lot of different ways, artists try to set up a piece of art so that it changes your perspective, so that you have to look at it or think about it in I guess what I would say, uncharitably perhaps, is an unusual way, right?
Sure, just foreign to you in some way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the easiest, you might even say that's the cheapest way to make someone feel something. And that's really what we're looking for in art, is you want to feel something. But in order for an artist to do that, they have to kind of predict and manipulate your reaction to a static thing. Whereas a game does not have that problem. A game is a thing. And the way that we interact with things is to behave, is to act on things. And so you start off already making that connection. And so I think that's kind of why video games took off as fast as they did, because it was just an immediate way to notch the highest level of attainment of regular art. But we've sort of stagnated since then, sort of like you were alluding to, because once you're there, you have to figure out, well, how do I take it a step further? And that's not easy. You need to create something new that's never been seen before. We're both explorers. We're both looking for new experiences.
Right.
Yeah, I think I've trailed off.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're definitely right. That we both crave the new experience, the new thing. And the way I just feel that not many video games have capitalized on that emotional art touch. Yeah, you know, the most popular one, for example, is probably Shadow of the Colossus, right? And
I have to confess that I've actually never played Shadow of the Colossus.
I've never beaten it, but I have played it. But it is like labored to be, or spoken of to be, like one of the best like emotional gameplay interactive art games.
Mm-hmm.
And I can definitely see from what I played that it is, or from what I've experienced so far, that it definitely was. But I just feel that there's too many games and not enough that attempt to create that.
Okay, so you're it sounds like, if I've got it right, it sounds like part of your objection isn't that the thing that you want doesn't exist, so much as I think you have the problem with games that I have with Shakespeare, whereas like everybody lauds this guy as the best writer of all time, and I feel like it's pretty simple to just point at a bunch of writers who are better in the modern age. But my complaint isn't that he's not a good writer. That's clearly not the case, right? My complaint is that there are so many better things around that for this thing to be receiving the attention and the praise that it is seems somehow unjust. And for you, if I'm getting this correctly, the problem is that we have so much attention and so much money and so much production and I guess media coverage is going to, you know, I hate to use the old standby, but you know, your Call of Duty of the week. When
Right.
what you feel is that we should be focusing on the real money shots here, the real experiences that video games have potentially to offer us. If I'm reading you correctly.
No, and that's exactly it. That there's too many. There's too much. There's too many James Pattersons to Heinleins. Would be a good writer analysis. There's too many. Just schlock that for what we could have, for what we should have, really, for the amount of money that gets thrown around, for the amount of time that gets invested into these things. Not that everything is going to be profound and moving and the best thing, and, you know, the best thing each time, but just the overall quality for most of it isn't what I would say is up to par. For the more, it's like all of the literature that we have, how many writers are well known, you know, that's not even the right way to put it. I want more of the Heinleins. I want more of the Zelazny's. I want more of the Shakespeare. Sure, there's good things, but you know, other great authors. But I want more of the great authors. I want more of these great experiences. And what I continually see in the games is, yeah, the same. We have 15 battle royales right now that are coming out or are out right now. Like, sure, you need competition. You always need that, but for something that's supposed to be so artful and so creative, don't give me the same thing 15 times when none of them are going to stick anyway. Like, for the one game that I really liked this year, we had at least 10 battle royales. We had the new Call of Duty. We have the new Battlefield. We have that Ghost of Tsushima. We have Death Stranding, whatever the fuck that ends up being. We have all these things that they don't have an intrinsic value that they're adding to games as a whole.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably true.
Right, like 90% of, maybe not that high, but a large percentage of games I feel are just shovelware. Every year you have 3 or 4 standout games, if that, and how many games are released in a year. Not even just like the indie shit on Steam that you have like hundreds a day, but like, you know, actual games that you get
Sure,
announced, released a year. Like, and you have maybe 2, 3, maybe 4 standout games that come out that year, if you're lucky. A lot of the times you have shit years where you'll get one good game or one great experience or whatever. And I just feel for the amount of stuff that's coming out that we should have more. And it's also not fair for me to even say that. Like, people like the game of Call of Duty. Otherwise, people wouldn't make it and they wouldn't sell millions of fucking copies. So
I mean, yeah, I played it. It was fine.
yeah, like it's that. But I mean, there's like, obviously we're in the wrong about the whole of this, right? Because these other things are still getting made. Yeah. But I mean, like they're making the money. They're selling. People want that. Like
well,
I feel
just
that
because something's popular doesn't mean that it's correct or right or anything.
that is true. But it does mean that there's going to be more of that, as opposed to what, say, you or I want, which we're generally, for most games, we're generally on the same path for a lot of things with that.
Yeah.
I would say that we're definitely in the very niche minority of those things. Okay, like you said, it doesn't make it right or wrong, but from a business standpoint, we're definitely wrong. We're the ones in the wrong. Like, no, fuck these two guys. We want the ones with all the money, you know, like, so it's just it's more just that, yeah, I just want more. Like that's what it comes down to. I want more. I'm greedy.
I'm
you're selfish and greedy, and I want more.
That's fair. I don't see anything wrong with that.
Yeah.
I mean, if this was all for you, right? If you were a dictator and you were making these demands of your populace, that might be a different situation. But everything that is considered a win, according to what you're saying right now, is also a win for the rest of humanity, right?
That is true.
We would all benefit from more stuff.
That is true. That is very, very, very true. And I don't know if it's just my age making my case more discerning, or because I remember when I was younger, like I mean, even when I was younger, like I liked the shooting games and the fun games, but that was more for the social aspect of my friends, like hanging out with my friends and playing games. The game that you hang out and play with your friends is always going to be one of the best games you play.
I think that's probably true.
Yeah. So like that's I liked playing Halo. I loved the Halo LAN matches. Those are the Counter-Strike LAN matches. Like those were always fun. And they had their time, but they were definitely not my favorite of games. They were definitely up there, but that was more because of the other values outside, the values that the game brought to me in terms of external things from the game.
Mm-hmm.
Which is always, if anything can bring you outside joy out of whatever it is intrinsically, is always a plus.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, like, I would argue that MMOs are almost entirely that sort of thing, right? Like, the majority of the benefit that people are finding there is not in the game itself, right?
To an extent, I'll agree. There is when I was doing the Burning Crusade raids, there were gameplay that was unique to that and that time. There was definitely the factor of, my good high school friends that I would see all day at school and then go play all day at night, all night with, but there was definitely game there to play. Like, it wasn't solely so.
Well, I'm not saying that it's just that, but that the majority of what people are finding, like, let me put it this way. those games are not games in the same way that Call of Duty is a game, right?
Sure.
There is a game to play. Oh wow, I don't think I want any of these cards. There's a game to play there for sure. And it might even be a fun game if you haven't played any other game. But if you compare the gameplay of and I've never spent a lot of time doing this, so I probably shouldn't even mention it. But if you, the little that I saw, if you compare the gameplay of WoW with the gameplay of pretty much any action RPG or just RPG, it's gonna come up lacking, I feel. And so the reason why people play it isn't because it's better than other games, but in my opinion, that it is a game that you can play while also having all of these other experiences.
There is truth in that. I wouldn't say you are wholly correct in that, because there were some unique things that were going on with the raid bosses that could really only be experienced in that type of a setting with multiple players doing the raid encounter. There's, I wouldn't say basic, they definitely are not as fluid or fleshed out or as deep, I would say, as an action RPG or even just a regular RPG. But there was definitely challenging game that was interesting in those raid bosses. Now, the leading up to that, 99% of the game, yeah, total trash game, and I completely agree with what you're saying. And getting to that 1% is not worth it unless you have those external experiences with people. And it definitely becomes a special thing at that point. But to get to that, it was definitely in the right time, it was at the right place at the right time. I don't think that for me or for most anyone of our age would not get the same thing, would not find it as enjoyable or the game as compelling, except for in that real time period, that time frame of what it was.
Sure. I feel like we're in a pretty good groove here. I have to go for the night, but maybe this is a conversation that we should spread out, not just to today, but also like into tomorrow, and maybe this should be something that we come back to frequently. I feel like, we've hit a vein of something, and we should probably mine it for what it's worth.
Sure, I'm always down to talk about games.
Sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, let me let you go, and I'm gonna finish off this guy, which will take 2 seconds, and I'm gonna head out to bed.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for talking to me, man.
In. Yeah, no, it's always fun talking. I'm probably gonna jump over with Sean and Allie and shoot some stuff.
Yeah, sounds good. Don't forget to get me a USB of all the what do you call it?
Yeah, I was trying to think of how we're gonna get those to you. I guess we'll have to sometime soon. We'll hang out and do something. Whether it be dinner or just actually hanging out or doing something. And we'll get those over to you because I'm running out of hard drives. Like, I went to download and install a game the other day, and I was like, oh shit, I don't have space. Oh yeah, I have 25 gigs of video files.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna get those to you soon.
Yeah, that'll be an ease of a burden for both of us. All right, man. Yeah. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Okay, later, man.
Laters. As I recall, we were going through the tier list. I think part of what we did wrong last time was having our decks so thick and meaty. So we're going to try and semi-avoid that. And kind of look at what we've got going on here. Looks like I actually veered off the plan quite a bit here. Did Infinite Blades really make this cut? I guess with Envenom it seemed like a good idea. I wouldn't say they were doing a pure read on this anymore. Yeah, our black cards are getting to be kind of a minority of the cards that we've got here. Yeah, I don't know. I suppose we'll take it. Sure, let's get a relic, right? Oh my fucking god. Just in time to ruin that take, huh? And we'll take 5. Not my favorite. Adrenaline's good here and everywhere. mango's not too bad. Regen potion is also appreciated. Do I have any AoE yet? I guess not. Just in time to be a dead card. Yeah, this looks like it'll probably go long. Huh. Both of those are good here. Not a direct source of poison, really. That's too bad. Wonder if we can burst this guy down. Maybe. Probably. Nice. Well, that was dumb. This deck is going to fail hard there. Oh well. Yeah, it seems alright. Oh, right. Okay, good to know. Yeah, punked. I was not sure at all about that one. Interesting. Alright, let's see how badly this deck fares against the guy it's designed to get wrecked by. That seems good. Would have liked to have had Envenom already, but these are the breaks. Yeah, I don't really feel like having my plated armor scraped. He's gonna reset that poison too. That's not my favorite. This seems like a good time to get fucked by this card. I don't really necessarily want that. Not even sure what's right here, honestly. Seems good. It's really like 9 damage for me. Dig it. Do I need any of this? Yeah, let's just increase that. He's letting himself get down pretty well. That's pretty cool. Yeah, he's about to fuck the fuck out. This would be a good time to run my turnout and use these flying knees too. So 3 more cards, we can finish that. So much poison on him, that's really too bad. Yeah, it looks like that's just a card reset to half. Doesn't really matter what else you do. Yeah, he clears all of his stats. We might just take 30 here. Yeah, because that's way too big a scrape. Yeah, he's just entirely done fucking around with me. Yeah, I shouldn't even waste that pen nib here. So we won't. Thorn's MVP here, holy shit. There we go. Oh wow, is this the biggest I can do? Sure. I don't think I want a piercing wheel actually. I think I just take advantage. Seems better. Oh, he's straight fucked. Cool. Neat. There goes Ascension 5 with the Silent. I have to say this tier list is looking better than I initially thought. Definitely helps when you have Noxious Fumes to add to the mix.